You can be busy every single day and still feel like you're going nowhere. That's the reality most people don't talk about. From the outside, life might look perfectly fine, maybe even successful, but internally, something feels off. You wake up, follow your routine, complete your responsibilities, maybe even achieve your goals, yet there's this quiet, persistent feeling that something is missing. And the confusing part is, you can't always explain what that something is. That's exactly why this conversation matters. Because real success isn't just about being productive or disciplined. It's about feeling connected to what you're doing and why you're doing it. We've been taught that routines are the key to success. Wake up early, follow a structured plan, stay consistent, and eventually, everything will fall into place. And to be fair, routines do work. They create order, reduce chaos, and help us stay on track. But there's a hidden danger in relying too much on routine without questioning it. Over time, your routine can stop being a tool and start becoming your entire identity. You stop choosing your actions consciously, and instead, you just repeat them. Day after day, week after week, your life begins to feel like a loop rather than a journey. And that's when success starts to feel empty, even if you're doing everything right. Psychologically, this happens because your brain is wired for efficiency. It loves patterns. It loves habits. Every time you repeat an action, your brain tries to automate it so you don't have to think as much. This is incredibly useful for survival and productivity, but it comes at a cost. When too much of your life becomes automated, you stop experiencing it fully. You stop noticing the details, the emotions, the meaning behind your actions. Your brain shifts from being present to simply executing tasks. This is what psychologists often refer to as living on autopilot. And the scary part is, you don't even realize it's happening until you suddenly feel disconnected, unmotivated, or lost. That's why so many people reach a point where they ask themselves, is this really it? Not because their life is objectively bad, but because it lacks a deeper sense of purpose. They've been so focused on doing what they're supposed to do that they never stop to ask whether it actually matters to them. And this is where the idea of false success comes in. You can achieve goals, earn money, gain recognition, and still feel unfulfilled if those achievements aren't aligned with your internal values. In other words, you can build a life that looks successful on the outside but feels empty on the inside. There are a few key psychological reasons why people get stuck in this cycle. The first is fear, specifically, the fear of uncertainty. Even if your current routine feels dull or meaningless, it's predictable, and that predictability feels safe. Stepping outside of it means facing the unknown, and your brain naturally resists that. It would rather keep you in a familiar discomfort than risk an unfamiliar possibility. The second reason is social conditioning. From a young age, most people are taught a very specific path: study hard, get a stable job, earn money, and repeat. There's nothing inherently wrong with this path. But the problem is that very few people are encouraged to question it or personalize it. As a result, many end up chasing goals that were never truly theirs to begin with. The third reason is what you could call identity lock-in. After living a certain way for years, you start to believe that this is just who you are. I'm the kind of person who does this job. I'm the kind of person who lives this way. But in reality, that identity is not fixed. It's just the result of repeated behavior. You've practiced being that person for so long that it feels permanent. And this belief can make change feel almost impossible, even when you know something needs to shift. So the question becomes, how do you escape this cycle without completely disrupting your life? Because the truth is, you don't need to quit your job, move to a new city, or make some dramatic change overnight. Escaping the routine is not about destroying structure. It's about bringing awareness back into it. It starts with small, intentional actions that break the pattern of autopilot living. Something as simple as changing a part of your daily routine, trying a new activity, or even having a different kind of conversation can begin to wake your mind up. These small disruptions force your brain to pay attention again, and that awareness is the first step toward change. Another important step is learning to ask better questions. Instead of constantly asking, "What should I do next?" start asking, "What actually makes me feel alive?" Or, "What kind of life would feel meaningful to me?" These questions shift your focus from external expectations to internal experience. And while the answers might not come immediately, The act of asking itself starts to change how you think. It opens the door to possibilities that your routine may have been blocking. You also need to understand that purpose is not something you suddenly discover one day. It's not hidden somewhere waiting for you to find it. Purpose is something you build over time through action, exploration, and reflection. It's created by engaging with life, trying new things, failing, learning, and gradually figuring out what resonates with you. This means you don't need to have everything figured out before you start. In fact, waiting for clarity is often what keeps people stuck. Clarity comes from movement, not from overthinking. At the same time, it's important to redefine what success means to you personally. If your definition of success is based entirely on what others expect, whether it's money, status, or approval, you'll always feel a disconnect, because you're living someone else's version of life. Real success is deeply personal. For some, it might mean freedom. For others, it might mean creativity, impact, or balance. The key is that it aligns with your values, not just societal standards. And this is where everything starts to shift. When your routine aligns with your values, it stops feeling like a trap and starts feeling like a tool. You're no longer just going through the motions, you're actively choosing them. The same actions that once felt meaningless can begin to feel purposeful when they're connected to something you genuinely care about. That's the difference between living by default and living by design. Imagine waking up and feeling like your day actually matters, not because it's packed with tasks, but because those tasks are connected to something meaningful. Imagine going through your routine not as a set of obligations, but as a series of intentional choices. That's what a purpose-driven life looks like. It's not perfect, and it's not always exciting, but it feels real. It feels yours. The truth is, most people never reach this point. Not because they're incapable, but because they never stop to question their routine. They stay busy, they stay productive, and they assume that eventually, fulfillment will just happen. But it doesn't work that way. Fulfillment is not a byproduct of busyness, it's a result of alignment. And that brings us to the most important part of this entire conversation. If something in this made you pause, even for a moment, that's significant. Because in a world where most people are constantly distracted, the ability to stop and reflect is rare. It means you're starting to step out of autopilot. It means you're beginning to see your life from a different perspective. So here's the question that stays with you after this. Are you building a life that actually feels successful, or just one that looks successful from the outside? Take a moment to think about that, not quickly, not casually, but honestly. And whatever your answer is, it's worth exploring. Because sometimes the simplest questions are the ones that lead to the biggest changes.